What have horses taught you about just communication in general?
It's important to shut up sometimes. And that, I joke about that, but really there is so much in the nonverbal and so much noise that we make with just our language that tunes out so much else that happens in our body and in our spirit. And it's hard to hear sometimes when we're speaking with our mouths.
I'm Mira Aduda, and this is Into Healing, Austin Edition. On this episode of Into Healing, we explore the healing power of horses with Alexa Ball, a therapeutic riding guide who's had a lifelong bond with these animals. Alexa shares how horses act as intuitive mirrors, offering empathy, biofeedback, and profound lessons in presence and connection. If you support our mission of giving everyone a way into healing, please consider becoming a paying member through our Patreon. Your generosity will help bring more meaningful conversations to the world. Hi, Alexa.
Hi, it's so great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you. I'm so happy to be able to bring this healing modality to people and just talk about where your passion for this even came from. So maybe we can start there. Like, how did you get into this?
Yeah.
And what drew you to it?
Yeah, so I have always, since I was a little girl, which I think is a very common theme, have been drawn to horses. And I rode a lot when I was a little girl, and I rode more competitively when I was in college. And at every phase of my life, I just sort of found myself being drawn back to equines and to horses. And like, I would be sitting there in this new phase of life, and I'd be like, what is missing? And the answer was always like time outside and time with these creatures. And so I sort of rode in the traditional sense of the word up until college. And then I spent some time in AmeriCorps as a preschool teacher, which is a really, really hard time of my life, just as you're growing up, and it's sort of a hard role to be in. And I found therapeutic riding as a way to be with horses in a different way that was not competitive, it was not stressful, and it was far more focused on how do I sort of serve the horse and human connection, as opposed to seeing this as a tool in a competition. And so I think, honestly, now I know why I need to be around them for my own self. But I can just say that for my entire life, I've sort of sought what they give in terms of helping me pause and breathe and regulate, even if I was 13 and had no idea what those words were for that process.
So when was the first time that that spark kind of happened and you're like, oh, there's something here? Like when that first connection happened?
I think I was probably 11, and my friend had a horse. And I remember being like this little barefoot girl in a pasture, which is not safe. But I remember this horse just sort of like coming over, and I noticed that the horse chose to be with us. And he had this huge pasture, and it was just the two of us, and we were making daisy chains or something. And I think that in that moment, I really felt chosen. And I had never, you sort of experience that with people too, but the horse had no reason to be with us. The grass was greener on the other side, proverbially. And so I think I felt very safe and seen, I think, by this creature who couldn't validate me with words or the ways that we usually seek validation from people in our day-to-day life. So I distinctly remember feeling like, wow, he chose us. And I wonder what in me he saw to let him choose us. And I think there's a lot of continuation of that exploration in my work now.
Beautiful. Yeah. In working with these horses, as you kind of got deeper and got kind of further along in your work with them, it seems like these creatures, these amazing, majestic beings, are here to teach us something. But maybe some people might say, this is just like feel-good therapy, right? Oh, this is just like petting an animal, it just makes you feel good. what makes you realize that they're like more than that? It's more than just like feel good therapy. No, there's actual like transformation happening in this relationship with a horse.
So I think one of the hardest parts about healing and about being in a therapeutic mode is self-reflection and truly taking a look at yourself and your journey and what's going on inside. And being with a horse is not just being in their physical presence, but horses, in essence, or boiled down sort of scientifically, are these amazing biofeedback machines. And so we say at the ranch, like, horses are a great way to like see what's going on inside, because they are huge, powerful creatures of attunement. And so what you are feeling on the inside, the horse, because they are herd animals and because they are prey animals, will mirror back to you, because to them, that connection and what you are feeling as a herd mate is a indication of safety. And so they choose to mirror back to us as a like, hey, we're in this together. We are connected as herd mates. And if you're activated, I suppose I should also be activated. And so I think when we are with horses, we're not allowed to let our insides not match our outsides, because they are fantastic lie detectors. And so I think really it's just this like, it's this powerful mirror and a very non-threatening mirror. And so like, yes, it feels fantastic to be with a horse, and it can be really hard to acknowledge that actually there may be some activation in my nervous system that I'm not addressing, or there may be these feelings of fear or worthlessness or anxiety or sadness that we're not really willing and ready to admit. And the horse is like, hey, but I see them. And the way that I'm going to show up to you is sort of a mirror of what I see in you. And so how do we, in some ways, we're like, well, how do we help the horse? And by helping the horse, how do we help you?
Ourselves.
Yeah.
Huh. I love the idea of the horse being a mirror. You know, a lot of people are afraid of horses.
Yeah.
And they're afraid either for themselves or for others. Like I've heard, even when I've taken my girls, you know, to be around horses, like hearing, you know, is that dangerous? Maybe walk us through how the therapy with a horse, kind of how that whole process unfolds.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, because it's like, okay, I come here with a trauma, a pain, a thing I'm wrestling with. How does that process unfold?
Yeah. So I think the very short answer to that is it is all about the unfolding of a relationship. And so just as you would build a relationship with another person, there's sort of a meet and greet moment in which this horse is like, hey, and you're like, hey. And you sort of like spend some time being like, okay, what is your role in this relationship? What is my role in this relationship? And you establish boundaries with each other about what I can do to make you feel safe and vice versa. And then how do we grow that into a partnership that helps us accomplish things, whether that be an obstacle pattern or simply grooming. And so I think that there is fear, and I think that's okay to be afraid of a horse. It's very natural. But I think part of it is like, how do you admit that fear? And how do you let the horse show you both how to keep yourself safe, and that you are sort of like on this, they have every reason not to trust you too. And so this like trust is such a two-way street between the horse and the human, I think. And so I think, yeah, if you think about the unfolding of a relationship, that is the therapeutic process of equine therapy, really. And there are moments where there is rupture and repair. And there are moments in which somebody is very shut down and you need to take space. And how do you have enough secure attachment to come back together and know that that was an attack on you or your personality or something that they don't like about you, right? So I think like, you know, just the way you would approach another person with curiosity, I think coming into the therapeutic space with curiosity for the horse is how you sort of overcome that first step of fear. And you can be curious from afar.
So walk me through, I show up at Healing with Horses and it's my first time interacting with a horse. Walk me through that process. How does the process unfold?
Yeah. The first thing that we'll do is we go over safety. So horses are still animals, and they have instincts. And so the first thing that we do is sort of establish where the boundaries of safety are. What does it mean to not put your foot under a horse's foot? And we cover that baseline because it is important to us. Safety is the number one priority for us. But it's also important that our participants know that we are there as instructors to keep them safe. That is our way of saying, I am here to keep you safe. When you are scared, when you are fearful, when you are nervous, I've got you. I'm paying attention for us and what's going on so that you can focus on the healing part. The actual first meeting and the first moment with a horse, often we'll pause the participant and we'll say, how do you like to be greeted? How do you like to be approached? Because sometimes our instinct with a horse is to go up to them and be like, look at that cute nose. Let me just pet that face. And we'll sort of pause and be like, is that how you would like to be greeted on the street? Often the answer is no. Sometimes it's yes. And we question that too. But even in that first, we're giving them agency to be like, oh, how do I like to be in a relationship with another? And so again, we're saying this horse has a way that they want to be greeted and to start this relationship. And how do you want that to feel too? And so we'll pause before that first moment of touch. And we'll say, what are a few ways that we can start this relationship that feels safe to you and to them? And often that's with a touch on the shoulder, or it's a verbal hello, or maybe the horse is curious and will look over and sniff your hand. But the first moment of making sure that our participants know that just like they have agency, our horses also have agency. And this is a place of like respect, is something that we try to establish really early. And then we'll talk about this horse communication that we've been talking about of, I know they seem like these mysteries, but actually when we pause to notice and listen, we can learn a lot. And that's usually within the first, 15, 20 minutes of meeting them, we're getting right into what is their communication style. And often by that point, if there is fear, we often see a switch over to wonder and curiosity of, wow, I get to be in this space with this creature. And our horses are so curious and they're silly. And they're really good at making people feel welcome. But yeah, how do we establish a relationship built on trust and respect from the start?
Wow. Imagine that carrying out into the world.
Yeah. Right? Just even that, again, that pause of how do I want to show up to this person and how do I want them to show up to me? And setting that intention early can set the tone for the relationship the whole way through.
How does healing with horses unfold? Like if you have a trauma or you have something that you've dealt with or are dealing with, how does the horse help you move through that? Yeah.
So I think it goes back to the idea of like the nervous system activation. And I think a lot of, if you think about the embodiment of trauma and how it shows up in our body, a lot of that work comes into just bringing awareness into, okay, what are these things that are triggering me and how do I move through that feeling? And how do I build a secure connection with something that actually has nothing to offer me other than connection? And so I think in the process of activation and regulation, we build resilience. We build the skills to notice when we need to take a pause or to take a break. We build the skills to notice, like, I may be feeling unsafe on the inside, but I have the tools to move through this. But I think, like, just the way that a client and a human therapist may prioritize the therapeutic relationship through that co-regulation or that attunement, horses actually serve a very, very similar role. But I think I can't overstate the power of having this mirror of your own nervous system externally, and prioritizing the care for how we're showing up in our body and not just like the thoughts that we think we need to dispel.
So does the horse, one, show you what you need to heal and then help you heal that yourself in your body?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. And again, I think one of the huge powers of equine therapy is because they don't speak words to you. They don't speak English. And so you have to really get down to this base core layer of healing through their form of communication, which is all signals of their nervous system. And then, how do you move through that in a way that is safe and non-judgmental? A horse doesn't judge your fear. And then eventually transfer that into sort of more real life situations.
So explain to me what's happening on like a biological level when you work with a horse.
So horses are prey animals, so they are hunted. And they are also herd animals, which means that they are hunted together. And so if you think about the horse sort of in their herd in the wilds, the way that they are communicating is through these very, very subtle signals, such as an increase in heartbeat. They can feel the sort of like signals from our bodies, or slightly flared nostrils, or very perky ears, or their head goes up. And so if you translate that to the way that a horse will communicate with a human, they don't actually change the way that they communicate. And so they are able to pick up on the signals that our body are giving off, whether that be like our heartbeat, or our escalated breathing, or our hotter skin, or a slight tremble in our hand. All of these things a horse reads from the human. And then they sort of bounce that signal right back to the human. So this, like, if you think of like biofeedback in the therapeutic sense, we like hook up all these sensors to your brain, and we sit you in a chair, and you have a pulse monitor and a breathing monitor. And the horse does all that for you with no wires attached. And so I think that, again, that attunement and that mirroring of the nervous system regulation, just at the base scientific level, is how that communication, that partnership forms and builds.
So the horse picks up on all these different signals, sends it back to you, so you feel, even though it wasn't like conscious maybe, then it becomes conscious, right? Like the horse picks up on the unconscious, makes it conscious to you, and then would that like trigger you? Like that you're suddenly, because like say I wasn't aware that my heart's beating faster, and suddenly the horse reflected that back to me. That would probably make me more anxious. Yeah. So does the healing come in trying to regulate then with the horse?
Yeah, I think the co-regulation is a huge part of it, but I think even a bigger part, in a way that it sort of becomes more accessible, is I work with a lot of teenagers, and I work with a lot of teenage boys. And, I can say, like, I notice that your horse is getting anxious. You're anxious too. Take your 10 breaths. Like, that's not going to go over particularly well, right? But if I pause for a moment and sort of turn the focus back on the relationship between the human and the horse, and I know that these students love these horses. I have many of them who will say that their equine is their best friend, and it's the person or the being they feel safest with. If I sort of flip the task or the mandate to regulate yourself into an offering of how can we co-regulate in this partnership? How can we help this horse find its center again? And in doing so, our students are practicing the skills to regulate themselves. And so sometimes it feels a lot safer to say, I'm taking a deep breath because my horse is nervous, than it does to say, I'm taking a deep breath because I just faced something really scary that I now have to overcome. And so that focus on the partnership and that nurturing of the partnership, there's so much practice and like skill learning that happens, and disarming of the skill learning in a way that doesn't make it feel like, will I fail if I don't become less anxious? And so, yeah, I think that's the power of truly the relationship, and just nurturing that empathy for the creature and therefore empathy for yourself.
I love that, because I feel like when it takes the pressure off of the fixing of the self, and then it also puts the emphasis on the in-relationship part, right? Where this theme has kind of come up in several conversations, where the healing never happens alone. The healing always happens in relationship. You almost need somebody to witness you for the healing to happen. And I find that so beautiful, that it's also the same with these amazing creatures, right? People have worked their way outside of the food chain, and horses are these very sensitive creatures. How do we tap back into that sensitivity as humans?
You have no choice when you're with the horse. That sensitivity is how you build the partnership that helps you accomplish the things together that you want to accomplish. And honestly, in our lessons, sometimes we let people trial and error, like, hey, I see that there's a lot of escalation and activation and new energy in a way that feels really dominating. Is that working? Or is there a way to show up with, firmness that is also kind and rooted in regulation? And domination can sometimes come from a place of like, I am powerful and you are powerless. And how do we accomplish things in a dynamic that is sensitive to the fact that we actually both have power, and honor the power that exists in both creatures?
Okay. Can you give us a few examples of maybe what, you say you work a lot with teen boys or just teenagers. Can you give us a few examples of what these different teenagers come to work on?
Yeah, a lot of emotional dysregulation. So how do I know what this big feeling is, and how do I handle it or manage it? There's a lot of sort of ADHD and attentiveness, hyperactivity. And then we also have a lot of students who have autism or Down syndrome or a disability that makes the sort of like human to human connection more challenging. But I would say the biggest one is emotional dysregulation, and sort of nested within that is what we're really focused on building is resilience and independence in these youths, that like you can and you are strong and you are capable and you deserve to be cared for. Is I think a big theme that we see.
I love that. You mentioning autism reminded me of how much, we're seeing a lot of research and a lot of work being done around telepathy and, kids that are nonverbal that have, these telepathic gifts. And it makes me wonder, like, is it even more pronounced, or is it even more powerful with horses, because they're nonverbal too? I wonder if you've had experiences there.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece of it. And I think, being able to work with a peer and a partner whose first instinct is not to talk to you or meet you at this cognitive level, but actually meet you from an embodied perspective is really powerful, because it just sort of erases the potential for judgment or these social norms that we place on individuals to like step into. But I think that nonverbal communication is just... And I often say that, like, I don't know some of the things that my students are saying to their horses. And I don't know what the horse is saying back. But I know that I am seeing two individuals who are in partnership and who are regulated and who are spending time doing exactly what they need to do in this moment to feel safe and to feel grounded and to find growth in that. And I think just as humans, we put so much emphasis on, like, what are the words coming out of your mouth? And, like, I think that's 55% of it, but this like body to body soul to soul stuff is I
Yeah.
think where the healing really happens. And, we have, for students who have autism in particular, there's a lot of power in the actual physical regulation that comes from riding a horse. So not just being with them, but the sensation of riding the horse. And you can see the horse as the ride goes on really start to relax and regulate as the student will relax and regulate. And, for an hour and a half a week, their nervous system gets a break and they get to feel calm. And I think there's just a lot of power, and didn't take any words to do that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you have a story that of somebody that you've worked with in the past years that's just like really moving, or just so like, something so memorable that you could share?
Yeah.
Just to show the power of this therapy?
Sure. I will do 2 stories. One of them is a borrowed story from somebody else. So the first one is we had a girl, she was 5, and she came to us with cerebral palsy and so a lot of physical challenges. And before she started equine therapy, she had trouble walking. She was using a gait trainer. She hadn't taken any independent steps. A lot of these like very independent things like going to the bathroom were seemingly impossible tasks for her. And she bonded with one of our grumpiest horses, and he loved her. He would stand still as a stone for her as she worked and groomed around him. He knew he was her rock, and he loved this little girl. I think he saw something in her that he was like, I think this is the person I could be with. And they choose their people. And he doesn't choose very many.
So when people come, do they just kind of see who they gravitate towards? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think in our perfect world, and when there's like sort of the time to do so, when we really prioritize trying to make the time, we'll often go out with a student for the first time into the herd, and the horse will come up to the person. And some horses will walk away and they'll say, that's not the energy I can manage today. But some horses will approach, and so the horses have choice in saying, this is the energy I can work with today. And sometimes those pairings are very surprising. So we leave a lot of room to be surprised about which horses choose which humans. But yeah, so she, after I think a year or 2 of riding, she took her first steps at the barn. And she sort of gained this strength in physical form that you just sort of never thought possible. But more than that, I think there's also so much healing in, if you think about somebody who's in a wheelchair or has a lot of mobility challenges, just the like power and the strength that comes from being somebody who then looks down on others. Not in a like pejorative fashion, but you've been in a wheelchair, but now all of a sudden you're 6 feet off of the ground and you are in partnership with this 1,200-pound animal, and you are strong and you can do it. And so I think there's so much like emotional and spiritual power, and all of a sudden going from feeling powerless to feeling power in this partnership. And I think we see a lot of success in retention for equine therapy for that reason, because it is a form of, in this case, physical therapy that also had this huge emotional and mental benefit of being like, I can be up here. I can do what other people are doing too.
Yeah, I'm powerful.
Really powerful. The other one is I still have a boy who has had a lot of sort of emotional challenges over his years. And I have seen a lot of sort of like, it's a very subtle change. But we sort of started our relationship and there was like a lot of resistance and a lot of like, no, and I don't want to do that. And a lot of negative self-talk and a lot of like, I need help, or I'm not capable, or I'm powerless. There's a lot of I'm powerless. And I've been working with this student, I think, for 6 years. And we're at the point in this relationship and in his horsemanship where he has actually become one of the people that we trust most with some of our horses who are experiencing trauma or who have something that they need to work through.
So the horses that experience trauma.
Yep. And so we had one horse in particular who was a retired police horse, and he has some nervousness around his head being touched. And it was a very subtle, if you were an outsider looking in, you'd be like, I'm not sure what's happening there. But I watched this student who struggled with empathy, who struggled with resistance, take an hour and a half to complete a very short, simple task. And the reason it was so powerful is because throughout the entire process, he was so attuned to this horse and what this horse needed. And he maintained his own regulation through the frustration of not completing something and not being done or not going the way that he wanted. And he was able to regulate himself enough that this horse felt he was the horse's safety tool. And again, it was a very subtle lesson looking from the outside in. We're like, what are we doing here? But having known the growth in this kid, all of a sudden I saw a human who was able to regulate himself for others. And I just think that is such a powerful thing to carry out into the world.
I love that. It's so interesting that I thought we were going to mostly talk about humans healing with horses, but also the story makes me think, oh, there's so much healing from the horses working with the humans too.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of your horses that come from like having trauma and
Yeah, I think most of our horses are donated to us, and we do evaluate them to say, will you be safe as a therapy horse? But we have 2 horses that came to us from the police force and were very well loved and cared for. But you can imagine a lot of human interaction that was unsafe for them. And we also have a horse that is a retired racehorse, which is a pretty physically and emotionally challenging industry for horses. And again, I think it goes back to like, there's so much power in a human saying, I'm showing up for the horse. And we don't hide our horse's trauma or history from our clients. And we also work with veterans and first responders. And so I think that saying to them like they're healing just like us sort of solidifies the power of how do we show up for this creature that I care for? How do I build empathy for them and therefore myself? But we are very adamant that our horses have choice in this program. And if a horse says no, they are allowed to say no to us. And so I think even in the way that we care for our horses as an organization, we are trying to model to the people that come to us for services that you have a right to be cared for. You have a right to advocate for what you need. And sometimes it takes us a while to figure out what they're asking for, again, because they don't speak English. But it is really important to us in our model that it is the entire horse that we are connecting with, not just them as a riding partner, not just them as a therapy horse, but they are showing up with their full selves too. And again, I think even that is part of the model of like, how do we heal the whole person? And how do we heal the whole horse? And how do we just sort of create this space where it's okay to not be okay, and we'll work through it.
Yeah. You're making me think that working with horses is, when we're in relationship with a person or when we, meet a new individual, that each one of us is coming with our set of trauma and our set of like previous life experiences. And it's no different for a horse. Right? And it's just 2 people trying to be in relationship with each other and trying to figure out a dance, a way to work together, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, one of the ways that I think horses are they're different than the human-human relationship is...
Because it's nonverbal, right?
It's nonverbal, and a human can bring their trauma and how that shows up to them, and the horse will view it entirely non-judgmentally. As humans, even in the human-to-human therapeutic relationship, we talk about projection and countertransference and all of these sort of human-to-human connection challenges. A horse doesn't know any of those concepts. They are simply there to be with you as you are. And they have no judgment about the thing that's showing up in you, which I think is another really disarming way to approach processing your own trauma with this creature who says, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I accept you as you are.
I accept you as you are.
What's the significance of letting these horses kind of go out to pasture with the herd?
They are creatures of connection, and they help letting them return to their herd is a little bit like letting people come home to family. And being a therapy horse is a job, and it is a role, and they absorb a lot of the emotional energy just as a human therapist would. And we recoup and we refill our cup by connecting with our people.
So they are doing the same.
And they are doing the same. And they're playful with each other in the pasture. And it's amazing to watch the herd dynamics in terms of they'll assign a protector. There's always one horse that's sort of facing away from the herd who is on duty. Sometimes they're taking a nap because they know they're safe, but they are technically on duty. And so they get to reintegrate into this very natural way of being that is, I think, important for their own recovery after doing the important work of helping heal with humans.
And then sometimes you send out people to kind of be in the herd?
Yeah. So this is where, you're not attached to them in any way. There's no physical connection necessarily with the horse, but there is, if you think of all the healing benefits of regulation, of how they can offer a slow breath or a slower heartbeat, sitting in that herd really brings you, whether we notice it or not, into a state of just peace and slowness and awareness of our surroundings. And that awareness may start from a place of safety. I need to be aware of the herd around me, but it settles really into how am I existing in this herd? And it comes back to that sensory experience of hearing the horses around you chew hay. They'll come over to you as a herd member and greet you and then potentially move away. So in some ways, it models that how do we securely attach in a community without physical connection, but really just human or soul-to-soul connection. Horses are also very tactile. So sometimes in dysregulation, it's not just that breathing. I think the breathing is a huge component of it, but it is also grounding in that horses are very sensory. So the 5 things you can see their mane rustling in the wind. You can see the slight stomp of the foot because the fly is bothering them. You can see their ear twitch towards their pasture mates 20 feet away. Can you feel the fur underneath your fingers? What does it feel like? Is it rough today? Did I have little bits of dirt in there? Do they have any fly bites that may be standing out? How do they smell? Horses are very distinct in their smell. I love it. We often say that sniffing a horse is very regulating, but what do you smell? It's an amazing regulating experience. But what do you smell? How do we work with the experience of the physicality of the horse as a grounding tool in our senses?
Yeah, that's so powerful. So you mentioned a few times, this animal does not speak English. You've said that a few times. So do horses have a language? Do they speak horse language?
They do. They absolutely do. I think the best way to describe horse language is really in terms of nervous system activation and regulation. That is really their language. And there are physical cues of nervous system activation and regulation, just like in people. And some of the things that we're looking for are actually really subtle cues that we also notice in ourselves. So, for example, does the horse have wide eyes? Have they flared their nostrils? Are they breathing slightly faster? Are their lips or their jaws clenched? Are their ears forward or back? And all of these are cues that, we can't exactly know what they're trying to communicate with us, but they're signals that they are feeling unsafe or uncomfortable or annoyed. And then we sort of do the detective work to figure out what might be causing that. But they give us these very, very subtle nonverbal cues. And the places that we tell people to look first are often the ears is, I think, the most common one. Are they forward? Are they back? But I think a softening of the eyes is a really good cue of relaxation. They get these nose wrinkles that are really subtle cues that they're feeling slightly annoyed. And so that's another one that we say, can you notice just the features of your horse right now? Like, do they feel tense or do they feel relaxed? And that's their language, is really just nervous system activation and regulation. And those are all things that we can find a comparison to in ourselves. We're scowling when we're looking at our computer all day and our shoulders get hunched.
Or the annoying, that part makes me laugh.
Yeah, we have a little scowl on our own face when something is annoying us. And so they can't hide how they're feeling, actually, or what they're trying to say. And it's really just our job to slow down enough to pay attention, just as it is our job to slow down and pay attention to ourselves, to take the time to regulate and to heal. And I think what's really fascinating about horses too is they all have their own version of their language. And as you start to get to know different equines, you know that this horse has a tail swish, which is their sign of like, I'm slightly annoyed right now. And some horses are louder than others. Some horses give really subtle cues. And so we have to get really quiet to hear them. Some horses will say, I don't like that. And you'll know immediately. But again, I think there's power in how much choice we give them in the relationship, and space, therefore, for them to communicate those things. And if you look back in history, horses have always been tools to humans.
Yeah.
And by taking away the job or the role of a tool, we gave them a voice. And they are so expressive and they are playful. They love play and connection just as much as people do. And so I think another form of communication that they have and language that they have is in play. They'll play with each other and they'll play with the students. They'll play with balls in the arena. Yeah, it's something that you have to look for. Just like we have to look at ourselves.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen horses play. Maybe describe that a little bit more.
So we have I think a very specific example is we have a yoga ball in the arena, and we have several horses who will seek out the ball and will just push it around the arena like a little soccer ball. And it's slightly deflated for safety reasons. And they'll pick up the ball in their mouths and sort of swing it around. And there's no like treats, or there's no motivation to do it other than like joy.
Yeah.
And they play with each other. We have a donkey who is he is so sweet. His name is Sweet Pea. And he loves to play. We sometimes will put him in the arena with another horse. One of his favorites is Callaway, and you will just watch them for 20 minutes play with each other. They'll like sort of how dogs play.
Yeah.
And again, for no other reason than connection through play. And I think we've really stripped back and sort of ignored the need of play in these animals.
Yeah.
But it is definitely in there.
Yeah, or just the needs of these animals, right?
Yeah.
Not even the need for play, just the needs.
Yeah.
Because we have seen them as a tool for so long, right? So as humans, ancestrally, we've been around horses for a really long time. Is there a subconscious connection there that maybe we're not like consciously aware of, but where horses like help us settle because there's like that deep knowing?
I think so. And I think it's important to remember that horses came into humans' lives to help them survive. And I do think it's important to acknowledge that actually I think some of the healing is in returning agency to the horse after a history of not having a lot of agency. And there are many instances in history in which horses and humans have had amazing, beautiful connections and partnership. But they came into the humans' world as a way as tools.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of honor in a lot of cultures for the horses and a lot of honor for what they have given us. And I think there are many instances in which they were treated with love and respect. But yeah, I love the option of returning agency to the horse while knowing that they are domesticated animals, and we've put them in this environment that now they're sort of trapped in as domesticated creatures. But how in this space do we let them have their freedom and let them express their natural instincts in a way that can heal through the power of choice?
You saying that makes me think like you're almost like rewilding a horse. And by rewilding a horse, you're kind of rewilding yourself. You're kind of connecting to the natural world by doing this work.
Yeah, and there's a lot of movements in the equine world right now in particular. There's like natural horsemanship and is I think one example of it, but there's a lot of examples of work in which we are trying to remove the physical connection to the horse as a tool of control. And there is a sense of rewilding and sense of like, we are in this together as two animals when this 1,400-pound animal is like, yeah, we're doing this together. And so, yeah, what does it mean to like literally take away these tools of physical control and
domination
and connect in an entirely different way? That still can lead to these amazing outcomes and these amazing partnerships, but isn't based on fear or force.
I'd love for you to expand a little bit on, just the how we really take care of these animals and, how do we treat them humanely and, all that, because I feel that that's kind of it applies to horses, but it also applies to just in general, the value we place on animals and how to care for them more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's absolutely the physical side of things. Horses have their own Maslow hierarchy of needs. Are they being fed enough? Do we have the correct vet care? If we're seeing a physical problem with them, are we addressing it appropriately? Do they have time and space with their friends to connect? So there's that sort of like hierarchy of need sides of things that has to be prioritized. It is just table stakes. But the other way that we prioritize the care of these horses is in the way that we give them their choice. And if a horse says no, our first question is not, well, you have to. Our question is, okay, why are you saying no? Are you really hot? And actually, we need to clip you so that you feel more comfortable in your body. And then you
what
can
does
work.
Clip you mean?
You shave them.
Oh, you shave.
Take off their hair. Horses were not built. Nobody was built for Texas heat. So we help them out a little bit sometimes. Are you seeing that? Are you trying to communicate that your feet are really sore? And so just approaching a no with a why is a great way to make sure that the horse feels safe and is cared for and that their needs are being met. And there's sort of a nuance to the choice that I also think is really important, is just like humans, if you give them a choice, it has to be a true choice. And so I believe very deeply in that if you are giving a choice, no is an okay answer. There are some things, just like with humans, that no is not an option for. So, for example, we have to go to the dentist. Horses also have to go to the dentist, and they like it just about as much. And so we don't lie to them and say, this is something you have a choice for, but I'm going to really goad you into wanting to do it. But we approach them with this, like, I'm here to care for you. And I know you may not like this, but I'm going to be with you through this hard thing. And I think a lot of trust and relational trust is broken when you lie about whether or not a person or a horse has a choice. And I think that's where the ethics of it comes in, is our horses can say no. We are going to understand why they're saying no and try to address that need. And we're not going to lie if their no is not an option. And usually, again, that comes in when it's like a health concern. Like, we have to clean out your feet so that you're not stepping on rocks. And I understand it's annoying because you have to hold up your very heavy leg. But we're going to help them. We're going to let them participate in the process and give them agency in a way that preserves their dignity as not tools, but as partners.
I love that. I don't think we talk about dignity enough,
Mm-hmm.
nor in relationship to people, nor in relationship to
I
animals,
agree.
right?
I agree.
Yeah, like I have this thing where I say, I want to be in a relationship with people that at least believe that all living beings deserve life and dignity.
Yeah.
And that seems very controversial.
Yeah. It does.
Like it seems kind of a baseline for me, but it seems quite controversial for some people.
Yeah. And it can be easy to fall in the trap of, well, they're here to serve us. They're here as this therapeutic tool. But I think that defeats the purpose of the therapy, right? If it's so based on partnership and authentic connection. And so treating them with dignity is a model for treating ourselves with dignity.
Yeah, if they're a mirror, right? Huh. I'd love to get into a story about a horse setting a boundary or saying no, if you have one to share.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a horse, Dash, who he was a retired police horse. And he has been in the program for a year or so now, and he's a fantastic therapy horse. He's very willing, he's very connective, he's very communicative. He has these very sweet communicative eyes that even if you're not looking, you can't notice the communication in them. And we started noticing recently some avoidant behaviors in him. He didn't want to be caught, and he didn't want to participate in lessons in the same way that he was previously. So he'd sort of like come into the middle or come to an instructor as a cue of like, I don't feel my best right now.
And when you say caught, means like just getting
Coming in
to
from the pasture.
Yeah.
Yep. And, I think that is where our curiosity kicked in. And we had a instinct of like, okay, maybe there's some trauma about what happened as a police horse, just being around so many people. Or, maybe he has some vision problems in this eye. And so you sort of go through this curiosity checklist of like, what could be causing this? But he communicated to us that he was not feeling his best. And he didn't set a hard boundary. And I think that's what's so powerful about this story is that his boundary was really like, hey, y'all, like I'm not feeling my best. And we have such an incredible team that we're sort of like, okay, let's try and figure out what's going on. And so we found out that he actually has kissing spine, which is it's an unfortunately common thing in horses where their spine sort of starts to rub together. And it's treatable in many ways, but we didn't know it. And so we paused and we took him out of the program and we took care of all of those medical needs. And
So how does this affect the horse?
it's just sore. It's sort of when you have a lower back ache and everything in life is just 15% more miserable. And he's a very stoic horse. And so, again, his communication was so subtle. His no was really subtle. But we ended up taking him out of the program, and he's now in a rehab program, and he's gotten like the attention that he needs. But I think it was really powerful because not only were staff like, okay, I think we need to figure out what's going on, but our students started noticing like, I don't think he's rejecting me, but I think he's saying no for a reason. And I think that's really powerful to model to our students, like, hey, you can advocate for yourself. And it's really hard for Dash to advocate for himself. He's he's a people pleaser through and through. And
using them as a role model is really powerful.
yeah. And I think it says a lot to how safe he feels with us to be able to communicate a no. That's really hard to do if you feel unsafe.
It probably gives also these kids or these teenagers also permission to say no.
Yes.
And to set a boundary as well.
That's exactly right. We've also had stories of a horse who, sort of going back to the biofeedback, a student was about to have a seizure and the horse planted. And we had no idea. We were like, why are you stopping? We're in the middle of a trail ride. Like, there's no snakes on the ground. We sort of did our curiosity check and planted and was like, I cannot move. And then the seizure happened. And, I think in that way, like you think of therapy dogs who are sort of have those senses. But that was a no that the horse was like, I am here to keep my human safe. And I'm going to stop. And so things like that will often come up where the horse is like, the person is unsafe and I'm going to pause so that we can assess. And
Yeah, it's amazing how they pick up on things before we pick up on things, right?
yeah.
I want to talk to a little bit kind of the transformation that happens through this healing and then the impact it has on the wider family unit or community or kind of the world. Maybe you can speak to that or give an example. I know you even mentioned like, oh, you work with Down syndrome kids, or maybe giving an example of how this work ripples out into the world.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of power in seeing the power in others. And if I think of a family system, often people will come to equine therapy to be like, okay, I have to fix a problem. And what they actually see, and I'm thinking specifically of parents and their kids, what they actually see is growth and resilience and independence development and a belief that their child is capable of these things that may have felt inaccessible to before. And our role, much of our role as equine therapists is really to say, especially from like the adaptive riding side, is to really to say like, look how amazing your kid is. Look what they did today with this 1,300-pound animal. I noticed this way that he or she or they regulated with this horse. And we may not see that at home, but I know it's in there. And so I think just starting at the individual level of advocacy helps the family system just have hope that change is possible. There are also, and again, I think that grows into the community as well and into the sort of larger systems. And I think regulated people regulate people. There's also a lot of different therapeutic modalities with horses that involve sort of observation of the horse. So if you think of the family system, there are some ways to apply the understanding the family system to identifying the specific horses in a herd. And so we can work with or observe horses even from afar or in direct partnership as I'm curious about how this form of communication, maybe one horse really pushed another horse off of the hay bale because they were really hungry. I wonder how this type of communication shows up in your family system and what's a way to both interpret that and potentially a different way to do it. So you can sort of work with the herd dynamic as a mirror of the family system in a really interesting way through a couple different modalities.
Wow. Yeah, I never even thought about that you can kind of learn from their interactions, right? Not just from them as individuals, but how they work in community.
Yeah.
You know, and them as a community mirroring back, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm super curious, as you've been doing this work, what has this work kind of taught you about yourself?
I was a very escalated child, not necessarily behaviorally escalated, but I can reflect back on myself as a kid and be like, there was a lot of energy and there was a lot of activation in me. And I sort of throughout my life have seen that as my natural state. And these horses, so I have my own horse in the program. He's a retired racehorse. And he has very little tolerance for my in the red zone. We are here to get something done. We have a to-do list, buddy, attitude. And I'll walk in and he sort of looks at me and he's like, take a breath, girl, and we'll get through it together, but I need you to slow down. And there's so much in our world today that says, do more, go faster, accomplish more. And the horse you have to slow down around the horse. And I never believed that I could get done what I needed to get done if I slowed down at all. But we get a lot more done when we take the time to check in, to pause, to ask ourselves, is this really what I need to be doing right now? Or do I just have this perceived notion of what I think I should be getting done? What is my intention of how I want to move through this task? And it can be as simple as something of grooming, where you're like, okay, well, I just have to brush this horse. I can do this in 3 minutes flat. Like, it's not that hard. And Callaway will sort of be like, okay, but this is actually a really important moment for both of us to check in with our bodies. He has a lot of physical pain, trauma from being a racehorse. And so he'll communicate to me in his way of like, you're going way too fast. And actually, we're going to get a lot more out of this to set ourselves up for success in the next thing if we take a minute to address not just the task, but ourselves within the task.
That's super powerful, especially in the society that we live in right now, right?
Yeah.
Where we're just being kind of...
We're very task-oriented.
Yeah, and just like the way, I think just the way the everything moves is so quickly. And just that reminder even to breathe, right? Or to slow down is so powerful. And that horses can teach us that, you know?
Yeah.
So if horses can help us heal, what can happen when we open ourselves to different ways to connect with each other and with the world around us?
One of the things that I love about the horse-human connection is that there's a lot of room for surprise, because we show up to our horses with a new week behind us and a new week ahead of us. And our horses are very present creatures. They have forgotten about the grocery list that you were complaining about last week. Like, they are truly present creatures because they have to be to survive. And this power of we show up to a horse and they see us as a new person every time. And they do connect with humans and that they'll recognize you and they'll want to connect with you. But especially if you have been showing up honestly in the relationship and admit when you've done something wrong, they are not looking at you and wondering, what are you bringing to me based on your past stuff that I have to like be aware of or judge you for? They just let you show up as you are in that moment. And I think there's something so beautiful about what if we showed up to people in the world with that same curiosity of how are you today? Not how did that thing that affected us last week carry forward in today, but in this moment, what's going on? What can we be open to? What can we be curious about to find new in this connection? And, you know, a horse that a student struggled to do one thing with last week, they may be perfectly in tune with this week. And the horse is not going to look at them and say, well, you had a hard time with this last week, so I know you're going to have a hard time today. And oh, no, I'm going to be here.
Back to the no judgment, right?
Back to the no judgment.
It's like every day is a new day to try again, right?
Yeah. But really grounded in, like, our cells turn over very frequently in our bodies. And I think horses understand that and respect that and honor that more than people do, allowing you to show up differently. And it's okay to be a little bit different today, as long as you're being truly who you are and authentic in that connection.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share that maybe we haven't covered today?
There is so much power in just the presence and the stillness of being with a horse. We've covered this in a variety of ways, and there's a lot of healing that happens in action and in doing something and moving in a particular way. But being with the horse sometimes is enough. And
like your state of being.
Your state of
without
being.
Doing anything.
Without doing is enough to really just tune in. And so what's beautiful about this as a therapeutic modality and horses as a part of the healing process is there is often as much healing as there in sitting in a chair in silence with this being as there is in doing something with them. And so I often invite my students into that space of the pause and just to see what they notice there. And actually, there's not so much hard work or movement or task orientation that has to go into it to achieve healing. It's not about achieving it with the horse. It's really just about being in it with them.
What have horses taught you about just communication in general?
Really that it's important to shut up sometimes. And that, I joke about that, but really there is so much in the nonverbal and so much noise that we make with just our language that tunes out so much else that happens in our body and in our spirits. And it's hard to hear sometimes when we're speaking with our mouths, and what happens when you stop using this language that's very easy and instead tune into some more of the subtle cues that are true, but may just be softer.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for coming and spending time with me.
It was really a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. You can connect with Into Healing on TikTok and Instagram for more inspirational and behind-the-scenes content, and visit our website, intohealing.com, for transcripts and other goodies. Thank you for joining us.